Hello, welcome to the Animation Show. Today on the show we'll be talking about a variety of interesting topics regarding the techniques and development of stop motion animation. I have one guest with me today he's an expert on certain parts of these topics. So, if you could pick two of the most influential stop motion pioneers, who would they be and why?
I'd have to say probably William Horner for a start. William Horner, he was the developer of the Zoetrope, which was it was essentially a toy, and it had little strips in the middle of it, and it was a circle, and then on the outside of the circle you had little slits, and you spun it round and you looked through the slits and you could see the strip inside and it was moving. And he was really influential because he was the first person who created some sort of toy. So it was the first time people could view a sort of animation in the comfort of their own home and they could see it. And obviously now if we use that we find it very boring very quickly, but at the time this was absolutely fascinating to them because they'd never seen each other. And but the problem with his toy was that due to it being so early and also it being drawings, that it was quite infrequent, like how quickly you saw the animations. But nonetheless, it was still it didn't really matter much to the audience at the time because obviously it was the first thing they'd ever seen. And I'd probably say the second person to be the most influential would be Émile Reynaud, who was a French inventor, and he was responsible for the first projected animation. So he basically developed on the Zoetrope to make the Praxinoscope, and the only difference was that there was a mirror in this so that you could project it, and of course this was a really big influence on modern day animation techniques because it was the first time we got projected onto the screen, and obviously after that we had Thomas Edison, who would then go on to create his device, which was actually a proper projector, but that wouldn't have been made without Émile Reynaud's invention.
Why has it been the most influential, do you think?
Horner, for a start, as mentioned before, he was the first person to give us access in our own homes, so we were able to look at it, comfort from home, and be able to see it for ourselves. Before it was something they would have heard about in newspapers and stuff, but Horner actually brought it to the people. Reynaud again, because as I said before, he made the first projected animation. If it wasn't for his contraption, we may not even have the modern day cinema.
Right. There have been many developers of stop frame animation over the years. Which ones do you think have been the best for developing the techniques?
I'd say you've got Lotte Regina, and basically what she did was she was the first person to create silhouette animation. What she did was she cut up pieces of paper freehand, and then she made her own shadow theatre, which essentially was just a light being projected onto it, and the silhouettes came up. Obviously this is the first time it was a kind of puppetry as well, and as she took pictures of it one frame at a time, it created the illusion that the models were moving. But what was particularly cited about her was that she had a very big influence from fairy tales, because she was from Germany, obviously the Brothers Grimm being quite a big influence on German youth culture. So she was really interested by that, so she made Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty with silhouettes. But she went on to make a film called The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, which was it was regarded as the first full-length animated film, and it was so well recognised because it went on to even influence the Walt Disney films. Obviously for the first good 50 years since Snow White came out, Disney were known for having animations that were the subject being a fairy tale. You've got Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, etc, etc.
So finally we now have all these...
Talk about the other one. Sorry. The other person I'd say is probably Willis O'Brien, and Willis O'Brien I'd say because he was a stop motion pioneer and a special effects animator. He was the guy who made the King Kong puppets. Now what he did was he got a big set, and then what he would do with the set is he made mini models, particularly gorillas. He studied gorillas' movements and how they would fight. He actually went out and did his research, and he applied this to his small sets to make the King Kong model. And this was a big influence because you can see today with Aardman Animation, which I'll go and talk about in a bit, that's how they film. They'll set up a massive set and they'll use their clay models on the little set, and they'll have them moving around the same way he did with King Kong. And because he made the King Kong, he went on to just go on and influence how special effects would be done today.
Right, so you mentioned Aardman there. So do we have many contemporary artists developing stop motion in the modern day now? Who do you think these people are? What companies are doing this?
Well, as I said, Aardman being the most forefront contemporary animated studio, they made the Wallace and Gromit franchise, they made Chicken Run, they made Creature Comforts, they've made all sorts of animation, mostly by Nick Park, who would go on to get them to win their Oscars, the first one being 1989, with Creature Comforts. And what's unique about Aardman is that he used plasticine models, and you can even see it when they filmed it, so you can see the thumbprints on their head. And he used thumbprint models and took one picture at a time in movement ever so slowly. Ridiculous amount of patience they must have. And as I said before, they used the little sets. So they'd literally build a model village, and then that would be their set for like 3 years potentially. But they even went on to go make with CGI, so they made a film called Flushed Away, and what it did was it looked visually like it was still a plasticine model, but actually it was a CGI. I mean, I can't imagine how they'd get plasticine rat getting flushed down the toilet. And I'd also say that Tim Burton was one of the most influential because he has such a unique gothic style to it. So Tim Burton really understood that, and he still does obviously, that this form of animation is an art, and he can add a style to it which makes it unique and complex because he could do it in a way that 2D animation couldn't. He was known for being influenced by the 1930s Universal horror films such as like Frankenstein and Dracula, and so he understood how he could bring a monster to life, but with his other use of filmmaking he could bring the humanity behind it. So the whole theme of The Nightmare Before Christmas is a bunch of monsters trying to recreate Christmas, but it's still got a really good human value to it. And the same with Corpse Bride and Frankenweenie, beg my pardon. They've all got quite dark colours, got a lot of purples and blacks going on. Again, like quite a gothic style, and I think he was really good because he's one of the most influential people to bring style to animation.
Thank you very much. No, it's okay.